first time he pulled me into his arms, I felt the world fall away. The noise, the fear, the doubts, everything disappeared. For a moment, there was only warmth, safety, and him. I didn't know love could feel like shelter, but in his embrace, I realized I had finally found my safe place. Summer had always meant noise, the hum of air conditioners in every window, kids chasing each other on bikes, sprinklers arching across parched lawns. But that summer, everything felt quieter, heavier, like even the air was waiting for something to happen. I had just moved into a new town with my mom. She said it was a fresh start, but I could tell she meant a clean escape. I didn't argue. I was used to starting over. Our house was small, at the edge of the neighborhood, with paint peeling on the porch and a swing that squeaked when the wind blew. I unpacked my room slowly, dragging out the process like it might make me feel more settled. But nothing about it felt like home, at least not yet. The first time I saw him was across the street. He was helping his dad carry in boxes from the back of a pickup truck. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that caught the sunlight. He laughed at something his little sister said, and the sound carried easily across the quiet street. For some reason, I froze, like my body already knew he was going to matter before my brain caught up. Later that evening, he knocked on our door. I opened it, and there he was, sweat still clinging to his forehead, a grin easy and unforced. "Hey," he said, holding out a plate covered with foil. "My mom made extra lasagna. Welcome to the neighborhood." I don't know what surprised me more, the gesture or the fact that his eyes lingered on mine a fraction longer than necessary. "Thanks," I said, trying not to sound awkward as I took the plate. He nodded, then hesitated, like he wanted to say more. "I'm Ethan." That was how it started. The next few days blurred with late-night unpacking and long mornings filled with the scent of fresh paint. But every time I stepped outside, he was there somehow. Mowing the lawn, tossing a football with his little sister, sitting on his porch with his headphones in. And every time, he waved. Sometimes, he crossed the street just to say something random, like, "Crazy weather today, huh?" Or, "Your porch light flickers, you should fix that." It felt strange. I wasn't used to being noticed, not like that. One afternoon, when the sky was heavy with the threat of rain, Ethan called across the street, "Wanna hang out?" I almost said no out of habit, but something about the way he asked, so casual, so sure I'd say yes, pulled me in. "Yeah, sure," I said. We ended up in his garage, the rain starting to tap against the roof, the smell of gasoline and old wood thick in the air. He showed me his bike, his guitar, the collection of movie posters taped along the walls. "You play?" I asked, pointing at the guitar. He shrugged. "A little. My dad says I'm wasting my time." I wanted to tell him that nothing about him looked like a waste of anything, but instead, I just said, "Bet you're good." That night, when the storm really hit, the power went out. My mom lit candles in the living room, but I couldn't sit still. I found myself looking out the window toward Ethan's house, where faint flashlight beams danced across his walls. Then, knock knock. I opened the door to see him standing there, rain dripping from his hair, flashlight in hand. "You okay?" he asked, voice calm but eyes sharp like he was worried. "Yeah," I said, though my heart was racing for reasons I didn't want to name. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. For the next few hours, we sat on my living room floor, candles flickering around us, talking about nothing and everything, favorite movies, stupid childhood fears, the way this town felt like it swallowed you whole if you weren't careful. There were moments where the silence grew heavy, like something unspoken hovered between us. His shoulder brushed mine once, and I felt it all the way through me. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. When the power came back on, it almost felt like the spell broke. He stood, stretching, giving me that lopsided grin. "Guess I should head back." "Yeah," I whispered, though I didn't want him to leave. As he reached for the door, he paused. His hand hovered over the handle, and for a second, I thought he might turn around and say something that would change everything. But instead, he just said, "See you tomorrow," and slipped out into the night. When I went to bed that night, I couldn't stop replaying the way his eyes lingered on me, or the way his shoulder felt pressed against mine. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something. Something that made the new town feel less empty. Something that made the summer feel like it was only just beginning. And though I didn't know it then, that stormy night was the first time Ethan's presence felt like more than just company. It felt like the beginning of something deeper. Something dangerous. Something safe. The morning after the storm, the world felt sharper. Leaves glistened with leftover rain, sidewalks steamed under the returning sun, and everything smelled faintly of wet earth. I stepped outside, still groggy, and there he was, Ethan, already tossing a football in lazy arcs with his little sister. He spotted me instantly. "Morning," he called, jogging over like we'd known each other for years instead of days. I rubbed the back of my neck. "Hey." His grin widened, easy and disarming. Thought maybe you disappeared on me. Sorry to disappoint. Not disappointed, he said quickly, his eyes meeting mine in a way that made my stomach twist. Actually, glad you're here. It should have been ordinary, neighborly even. But something about the way he said it, low, like a confession, made it feel heavier than it should have. That afternoon, he invited me over again. His house was different from mine, messier, louder, alive with the sound of his sister playing and his mom shouting at the TV. He didn't seem to mind the chaos, he guided me past it like it was background noise, taking me upstairs to his room. It was small, with posters of bands I only half recognized and shelves cluttered with baseball trophies. His bed wasn't made, his desk scattered with notebooks. It felt personal, like stepping into a piece of him he didn't show everyone. Sorry about the mess, he said, shoving a sweatshirt off his chair. I sat anyway. It's fine. It feels lived in. He smirked. Better than feeling dead, I guess. We spent hours there. He played his guitar, fingers clumsy but passionate, while I listened. Sometimes he'd stop mid-chord, glance at me, and laugh like he'd forgotten I was watching. You're good, I told him, and I meant it. Nah. You're just being nice. Maybe. Or maybe I actually mean it. His smile faltered just enough for me to notice before he strummed again, softer this time. Dinner at his house was chaos. His mom insisted I stay, piling my plate high, while his dad barely looked up from the news. Ethan cracked jokes, rolling his eyes when his sister teased him, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized I was smiling more than I had in months. Afterward, when the dishes were cleared and his sister had gone to bed, Ethan nudged me with his shoulder. Wanna get out of here? We ended up walking through the neighborhood. The streets glowed with streetlights, cicadas buzzing in the trees. He kicked at a loose rock, his hands shoved in his pockets, quiet for once. You okay? I asked. He glanced at me, then away. Yeah. Just, sometimes I feel like I don't fit in, you know? I hesitated. All the time. His eyes flicked back to mine, and there was something unspoken in that look, recognition, maybe, or relief. For a long stretch, we didn't say anything, just walked. Our shoulders brushed now and then, and each time it happened, I felt a spark like static. When we reached the park, he climbed onto the swings, gesturing for me to join. We swung in silence, the chains squeaking, the night air cooling against our skin. Then he said, "It's weird. You've only been here a week, but it feels like I've known you longer." Yeah, I said softly. I know what you mean. The swing slowed beneath me, my shoes dragging lines in the dirt. When I looked at him, his face was half shadow, half streetlight glow, and it was the first time I thought, God, he's beautiful. We didn't say much after that. But when he walked me home, stopping at my porch, he lingered. He stuffed his hands deeper into his pockets, rocking back on his heels. Guess I'll see you tomorrow? Guess so. He didn't move right away, though. His eyes darted to my lips for the briefest second before he muttered, "Night," and turned away. Inside, my chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath the whole time. Over the next few days, we fell into a rhythm. He'd wait for me outside in the mornings, walking with me part of the way to the bus stop. We'd text late into the night, his messages stupid sometimes serious, but always something that made me feel like I mattered. One evening, we found ourselves back in his garage. He was sitting on the workbench, legs swinging, while I leaned against the wall. You ever feel like you're carrying something you can't say out loud? He asked suddenly. All the time, I admitted. He nodded, jaw tightening. Yeah. Same. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick, charged. I could feel the weight of his unspoken words pressing against mine, like if either of us broke, everything would spill out. But instead, he changed the subject, grinning like nothing had happened. Come on, let's go grab ice cream. We walked down to the corner shop, laughing about stupid things, his terrible guitar playing, my awful handwriting, until my cheeks hurt. When we sat on the curb eating, he nudged my knee with his. You're not as quiet as you pretend to be, he said, licking a drip of ice cream from his thumb. I rolled my eyes. And you're not as confident as you pretend. That made him laugh, head thrown back, eyes crinkling. And for a moment, it felt like the whole world tilted toward him. That night, lying in bed, I replayed it all, the way he laughed, the way his knee pressed against mine, the way his eyes sometimes softened when he thought I wasn't looking. Something was building between us, undeniable, unspoken. And though neither of us had said the words, I could feel it in every glance, every touch, every pause in our conversations. Something was about to change. The weekend crept up faster than I expected. By then, Ethan and I had already created a pattern, morning walks, late-night texts, stolen hours in his room or garage. But Saturday was different. Saturday was when he invited me to the lake. It's nothing fancy, he'd shrugged when he asked. Just a spot I go when I need to breathe. I wasn't sure what he meant until we got there. The lake was hidden behind tall pines, its surface a sheet of glass reflecting the sky. A rickety wooden dock jutted out into the water, and a half-broken canoe leaned against the shore. It felt private, untouched, like a secret he wasn't used to sharing. "You come here a lot?" I asked as we walked to the dock. "Pretty much every chance I get. Sometimes it's the only place I feel quiet." I sat beside him on the edge, our legs dangling over the water. He tossed a pebble, watching ripples spread outward. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty though, it was heavy, buzzing with something unsaid. Then, without warning, he leaned back on his elbows and looked at me. "Do you ever feel like the world expects you to be someone you're not?" The question hung in the air. My throat tightened. "Yeah," I whispered. "All the time." Our eyes locked, and for a moment, it felt like he could see straight through me. I had to look away, staring at the water, my chest pounding. We spent hours there. Talking. Laughing. Avoiding what was clearly between us. At one point, he shoved my shoulder playfully, and I shoved back. He caught my wrist mid-push, holding it tighter than he probably needed to. My pulse jumped. He let go quickly, clearing his throat. "Race you to the store?" The run back was breathless, ridiculous, both of us laughing so hard we doubled over by the time we reached the corner shop. Inside, he bought 2 sodas and handed me one like it was a ritual. Back at his place, we collapsed in his room. The ceiling fan hummed above us, the air sticky with summer heat. He lay sprawled across his bed, and I sat on the floor, leaning against it. "You always sit down there," he muttered, tossing a pillow at my head. "Maybe I like it. Or maybe you're scared to get too close." The words hit harder than they should have. I glanced at him, but he was staring at the ceiling, like he hadn't just said something dangerous. "I'm not," I muttered anyway. "Prove it." I don't know what possessed me, but I climbed up beside him, lying stiffly on the mattress. He smirked without looking at me. "See? Not so hard." The bed was too small for both of us, our arms brushing every time one of us moved. I tried to focus on the ceiling too, but all I could think about was the heat radiating off his body, the rhythm of his breathing. At some point, he rolled onto his side, propping his head on his hand. "You're quiet." "So are you." "Yeah, but I'm always like this." I turned my head, and suddenly, his face was inches from mine. The space between us felt electric, fragile, like one wrong move could shatter it. He didn't move closer. Neither did I. But the tension lingered, hanging like a storm cloud we both pretended not to notice. Eventually, his sister barged in, demanding his phone charger. The spell broke, and I nearly jumped off the bed. He just laughed, tossing her the cord. Later, after dinner, we sat outside on his porch steps. The sky was painted in streaks of orange and purple, the air humming with crickets. He leaned back on his elbows again, looking relaxed in a way that made me jealous. "You ever think about the future?" he asked. "All the time." "And?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Sometimes it scares me." He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Same." His shoulder brushed mine, light but intentional. Neither of us pulled away. That night, when I finally went home, I lay awake replaying it all, the bed, the porch, the way he looked at me by the lake. Something was building, undeniable, and it terrified me as much as it thrilled me. The next day, he showed up at my house without warning. "We're going for a drive," he said, jingling his car keys. We ended up at the edge of town, where an abandoned barn leaned against the horizon. Inside, the dust caught in the sunlight streaming through broken boards, turning everything golden. "It's falling apart," I said. "Yeah," he admitted. "But it's mine. No one ever comes here." He kicked at the dirt, nervous in a way I wasn't used to seeing. Then he looked at me, serious. "I like being around you." My chest tightened. "I like being around you too." The words felt too small for what they meant. His jaw clenched like he wanted to say more, but instead he just nodded. "Cool." We stayed there for hours, sitting in the dust, telling stories, laughing until my stomach hurt. Every so often, our knees would touch, and each time it happened, neither of us moved away. When he finally drove me home, the sun was gone, the world swallowed in darkness. He parked outside my house but didn't unlock the doors. "I don't want this night to end," he said softly. My heart hammered. "Then don't let it." He glanced at me then, eyes burning in the shadows. For a second, I thought he might lean across the space between us. He didn't. Instead, he smiled crookedly and whispered, "See you tomorrow." I climbed out of the car, legs shaking, and watched his taillights disappear down the street. Inside, the silence felt deafening. I pressed my back against the door, breath shallow. Something had shifted tonight. We were standing on the edge of something bigger, something dangerous, something I wasn't sure either of us was ready for. And I couldn't stop myself from wanting it anyway. The barn became our place after that night. Every time we sneaked out, every time we needed to talk without watching our words, we ended up there. Dust in the air, broken beams above us, but somehow it felt safer than anywhere else. And for a while, it was perfect. We would sprawl across the hay bales, lying shoulder to shoulder, whispering about dreams we didn't dare share with anyone else. Ethan admitted he hated the pressure his dad put on him to be tough. I confessed how exhausting it was to hide behind half-smiles and fake crushes on girls. Those walls we built for the rest of the world, they crumbled in the barn. But the closer we got, the heavier the silence between us grew. The almosts. The things unsaid. One afternoon, lying side by side, his hand brushed against mine. Neither of us moved it away. I stared at our fingers almost touching, my breath caught in my throat. He finally pulled away, sitting up too fast. We should head back before it gets dark. It stung more than it should have. I wanted to ask why he pulled back, but I didn't. Instead, I followed him out, the words stuck in my chest. The tension followed us everywhere after that. At school, in the hallways, we acted normal, like we were just friends. But every glance across the cafeteria carried a weight I couldn't ignore. And apparently, neither could other people. Dude, my classmate Ryan smirked one day, nudging me. You and Ethan, what's the deal? You two joined at the hip or what? I forced a laugh. We just hang out, man. Sure, he said, drawing the word out like he didn't believe me. That night, I couldn't stop replaying Ryan's tone. Did people notice? Did we look different? I didn't bring it up with Ethan, though. Until the weekend came and he bailed on me. Sorry, man, he said over text. Can't hang today. Busy. But hours later, I saw his story, him at the diner with Ryan and some of the guys from the basketball team. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just that he ditched me, it was that he looked so relaxed, so normal, so untouchable with them. When I saw him at school Monday, I tried to act casual. So, how was the diner? He froze, then shoved his books into his locker. Fine. Why? No reason. Just, you said you were busy. Yeah, I was. Plans came up. The dismissal in his voice cut deeper than I expected. Right, I muttered. Got it. For the first time since we'd started hanging out, we walked to class separately. The distance grew. Not all at once, but in little cracks, missed texts, shorter conversations, excuses instead of invitations. And yet, when we were alone, it was like nothing had changed. One evening, he showed up outside my house without warning, headlights glowing through my window. My heart jumped as I ran out. You want to drive? He asked softly. We ended up back at the lake. The air was cooler this time, the water darker. We sat on the dock, knees touching, not speaking for a long time. Finally, I blurted, Why'd you lie to me? His head snapped toward me. What? You said you were busy, but then you went to the diner with Ryan. He sighed, dragging a hand through his hair. I didn't think you'd care. Of course I care. The words burst out sharper than I meant. You're the one who said I was different. That you liked being around me. So yeah, it kind of sucks when you'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't answer. He just stared at the water, jaw clenched. The silence stretched so long it made my skin crawl. Finally, he muttered, You don't get it. Hanging out with you, it's different. With them, it's easy. No one looks at us twice. With you, he trailed off. With me, what? I demanded. His eyes met mine, raw and conflicted. With you, I can't hide. The words hit like a punch. Because he was right. With me, he wasn't Ethan the jock, Ethan the son, Ethan the guy who fit in. He was just Ethan. And maybe that terrified him. My throat felt dry. Maybe hiding isn't the point. He looked away again, shoulders tense. You don't understand. That night, he drove me home in silence. And for the first time, when he said, See you tomorrow, I wasn't sure if he meant it. Over the next week, it got worse. He started pulling away in public, walking a little farther from me in the halls, choosing different seats in class. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. But then I caught him laughing with Ryan, that same easy grin he used to save for me. It burned. When I asked if he wanted to hang out after school, he hesitated too long before saying, Can't. Got plans. Something in me snapped. Right. Of course. You're busy. Again. He looked at me then, eyes heavy with something I couldn't read. Don't do that. Do what? Make me feel like I'm choosing. But he was choosing. And it wasn't me. I stormed off before I could say something I'd regret. But that night, lying awake in the dark, all I could think was, maybe he didn't need me the way I needed him. And if that was true, what did that make me? The week after our fight stretched on like a punishment. I told myself not to wait for his texts, not to check the parking lot for his truck, not to glance down the hall hoping to catch his eyes. But I did all of it anyway. And each time I caught nothing, it carved me out a little deeper. Ethan wasn't ignoring me completely, he still nodded in class, still mumbled, "Hey," if we passed each other, but it was different. Empty. Like we were back to strangers who shared the same air but not the same heartbeat. I should have let it go. But one night, I couldn't anymore. I showed up at the barn, hoping, stupidly, that he might be there too. He wasn't. The hay smelled like dust and memory. I sat down anyway, pulled out my phone, and typed a message I'd been holding back all week. "Me, are we okay?" I stared at the screen, the blinking cursor like a dare. Finally, I hit send. His reply came minutes later. "Ethan, yeah. Just busy. Busy." The same word that had started this spiral. I wanted to scream. Instead, I wrote back, "You don't seem okay." This time, there was no reply. At school the next day, I caught him joking with Ryan again, throwing his arm across the guy's shoulder in an easy, careless way. My chest tightened. That arm had been around me once, holding me like I mattered. Now it looked like it belonged to someone else. I walked past them without a word, but apparently my expression gave me away, because Ethan caught up with me later in the hallway. "What's your problem?" he snapped. "My problem?" I laughed bitterly. "You've been acting like I don't exist, and I'm the one with a problem?" He glanced around, lowering his voice. "Keep it down." That made my blood boil. "Why? Afraid someone might hear you talking to me?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Ethan?" My voice cracked despite my anger. "Because one second you're telling me I'm different, and the next you're pretending I'm not even there. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he'd finally say the thing he'd been choking on for weeks. But instead he muttered, "You don't get it," and walked away. And just like that, I was left standing in the hallway, surrounded by strangers, feeling more invisible than ever. That night, he didn't come by. Neither did the next. The barn sat empty, the lake silent. My phone screen stayed dark no matter how many times I checked it. Finally, after 4 days of silence, I caved. "Me, if you don't want this, whatever this is, just say so." Minutes ticked by. Then finally. "Ethan, it's not that simple." I almost threw my phone across the room. I wanted clarity, and all he gave me were walls. The next Friday, fate threw us together again. We were paired up in gym class for basketball drills. The second we stepped onto the court, I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes. "Let's just get through this," he muttered under his breath, bouncing the ball. "Sure," I said flatly. We played through the motions, passing and shooting, but the silence between us was louder than the squeak of sneakers on the court. Then, halfway through, the coach called out, "You two make a good team. Keep it up." A couple of guys snickered, exchanging looks. I felt my cheeks burn. Ethan's face hardened, and the next pass he threw hit my chest harder than necessary. I flinched. "What the hell?" He didn't answer. He just grabbed the ball back and stormed to the other side of the court. When class ended, I stayed behind, shoving my stuff into my bag with trembling hands. That's when I heard him say quietly, "I can't do this." I turned. "Can't do what?" He looked at me like it hurt. "This. Us. Whatever we're doing." The words sliced through me. "So what, you're just going to erase me?" "It's not about you," he said, voice breaking. "It's about everyone else. If they find out." I stepped closer, my chest aching. "If they find out what? That we're friends? Or that maybe it's more than that?" His silence answered for him. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "You're scared." "Of course I'm scared," he snapped, voice raw. "You don't get it, my dad, the team, this town. They'd eat me alive if they knew." I wanted to tell him I understood. I wanted to tell him I was scared too. But instead, the words that fell out were, "So you'd rather lose me than risk it?" His hands clenched at his sides. "I don't know." That was worse than a no. I left the gym that day feeling like my ribs had been shattered. Every step down the hall echoed with the weight of his words. I don't know. But I knew. I knew exactly what I wanted. Him. Us. Whatever this was, no matter how terrifying. The problem was, I couldn't want it enough for both of us. And so, for the first time since that night in the barn, I stopped waiting for him. I stopped going to the lake. Stopped checking my phone. Stopped letting my eyes wander toward him in class. I forced myself to pretend I was fine, even when it felt like my chest was caving in. But the truth clung to me like a shadow. He had been my safe place. And without him, I wasn't sure where to go anymore. The silence between us became its own language. At school, we passed each other like ghosts. Sometimes his eyes flicked toward me, just for a second, just enough for me to feel it, but he always looked away before I could hold on. I laughed louder at lunch, threw myself into conversations that meant nothing, anything to make it seem like I wasn't watching him drift farther every day. But when I caught him in the corner of the library with Ryan, shoulders bent close, laughing in whispers, I couldn't breathe. Not because I thought something was happening between them, but because it should have been me. I left before he saw me. That night, lying in bed, my phone buzzed once. A single text from him. "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, the words blurring. My fingers hovered over the keys, ready to type out the 100 things boiling inside me. Instead, I put the phone face down and let it buzz against the mattress, unanswered. If he wanted distance, I'd give him distance. Even if it killed me. 2 days later, it almost all unraveled. Jim again, fate had a twisted sense of humor. We'd been assigned to the same group for a relay. I kept my head down, determined to get through it without acknowledging him. But on the third lap, as I sprinted across the floor, someone shouted from the bleachers. "Yo, lover boys, you're up next together." The room erupted in laughter. I froze, breath catching in my throat. My eyes snapped to Ethan's, wide, panicked, flashing like a cornered animal. The coach barked for quiet, waving it off, but the damage was done. The laughter still echoed as I shoved the baton into Ethan's hand. He ran harder than I'd ever seen him run, like he was trying to outrun the words themselves. After class, I headed straight for the locker room, heart pounding, but he caught me before I could disappear. "Don't ever let them talk like that again," he hissed. His grip on my arm was tight, almost painful. I yanked free. "Let them? You think I asked for that? You didn't shut it down." What was I supposed to do? Announce to the whole gym that we're not, what? Friends? More? Nothing? My voice cracked. "Keep it down." He glanced around, paranoia in every line of his body. I laughed bitterly. "Of course. God forbid anyone hears the truth." His jaw clenched. "You don't get it." "I do get it, Ethan. You're scared. But don't put that on me. I'm not the one running every time it gets real." His silence was worse than any argument. I pushed past him, my chest tight with fury and heartbreak. And yet, even then, part of me wanted to turn back, to tell him that no matter how scared he was, I wasn't going anywhere. But I didn't. Not this time. The days blurred after that. I buried myself in routine, homework, practices, meaningless conversations. But everything felt muted, like the world had lost its color. Until the night of the bonfire. It was tradition, last Friday of fall before winter closed in. The whole town showed up, teenagers crammed into trucks, music blasting from speakers, flames roaring against the night sky. I hadn't planned on going. But Ryan texted me, "Come through," and for once, I figured maybe being around noise would be better than sitting alone. When I arrived, the first face I saw was his. Ethan stood near the fire, red light flickering across his jaw, surrounded by teammates. He laughed at something Ryan said, but his eyes darted across the crowd, and landed on me. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then he looked away. I swallowed the lump in my throat and walked toward the drinks table, pretending I didn't feel my chest cave in. But no matter how hard I tried to blend in, I felt his eyes on me, tracing every step I took. Later, when the crowd thinned and music softened, I slipped away toward the edge of the field. I needed air. Space. "Why are you here?" His voice came from the shadows. Ethan stepped out, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets. "Why are you here?" I shot back. He exhaled sharply. "You shouldn't have come." "Why not?" "Because someone might see me standing too close to your perfect little world? That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, bitter and raw. "You're the one who made me believe I was safe with you. You're the one who pulled me in, and now you can't even look at me without flinching. Tell me, Ethan, what part of that is fair?" He looked at me like the firelight behind him wasn't half as bright as the storm in his eyes. His mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he whispered, "I can't lose everything." I took a step closer, my voice trembling. "So you'll lose me instead?" The silence stretched until I thought it might break me. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he said, "I don't know." I felt my chest cave in. My fists clenched at my sides, holding back the scream inside me. "You do know," I said finally, my voice sharp with hurt. "You just don't want to say it." I turned, walking away before he could see the tears burning in my eyes. Behind me, I heard him mutter my name, but I didn't look back. Because I knew if I did, I'd forgive him all over again. And I wasn't sure my heart could survive it. That night, lying in bed, I realized something terrifying. The boy who once held me like I was the only one in the world was now the boy I couldn't even touch. And if this was what love felt like, aching, forbidden, half-hidden, then maybe I wasn't ready for it after all. But deep down, I also knew, no matter how much it hurt, I wasn't done with him. Not yet. The bonfire embers still clung to my clothes when I walked into school Monday morning. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, my chest from the weight of everything unsaid. I told myself I'd avoid him, keep my distance. But the universe had other plans. Second period, empty hallway between classes. He turned the corner, nearly colliding into me. For a second, neither of us moved. Just silence, thick and heavy, our breath catching in the narrow space. "Hey," he muttered finally, his voice raw, like he hadn't spoken in days. I wanted to ignore him. God, I wanted to walk past without a word. But the way his eyes looked, tired, restless, like mine, pulled me back in. "What do you want, Ethan?" My voice cracked despite my best attempt at steel. He swallowed hard, glancing down the hall. "I can't keep doing this." Something in me snapped. Doing what? Pretending we don't exist? Pretending nothing happened? Because if that's easier for you, fine. He cut me off, his hand gripping my wrist and pulling me into the nearest supply closet before anyone could see. The door slammed shut. Darkness. Dust. My heartbeat roaring in my ears. "What the hell?" I started, but his hands were already on my shoulders, his breath trembling against my cheek. "I can't stay away from you," he whispered, almost desperate. My chest rose and fell so fast it hurt. "Then stop trying." His lips crashed into mine before I could think. It wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was every bit of anger, fear, and longing we'd bottled up, exploding all at once. His hands cupped my face like he was afraid I'd vanish. I clutched his hoodie, pulling him closer, needing him closer, like air itself depended on it. For a moment, the world didn't exist. No hallways, no whispers, no fear, just him. His warmth. His mouth. The way his breath hitched when I kissed back harder. But then the reality slammed into me as sharp as the kiss itself. I tore back, gasping, my fingers still fisted in his hoodie. "Ethan, we can't, someone will." He pressed his forehead against mine, eyes shut tight. "I don't care. I don't care anymore." "Yes, you do," I whispered, even as my lips brushed his again. "You're terrified. And so am I." The closet felt like it was shrinking, our breaths echoing in the dark. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, soft where everything else was rough. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. His voice cracked, bare in a way I'd never heard before. "I want you, and it scares me more than anything ever has." I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat closed up. Instead, I kissed him again. Slower this time, but deeper, like I wanted to carve the memory into both of us in case it was the last. When we finally broke apart, our chests heaved like we'd just run miles. And then, footsteps outside. We froze. Voices carried through the thin walls. "Yo, where's the extra paper rolls?" Someone rattled the doorknob. I stumbled back, shoving Ethan away instinctively, panic crashing over me. He braced against the wall, breath ragged, trying to look normal even though nothing about us was normal anymore. The knob jiggled again, then silence. The footsteps faded down the hall. We didn't move. The only sound was the pounding of our hearts. Finally, I whispered, "Do you see? This is what I mean. We can't keep doing this in the shadows, hiding like criminals." His eyes glistened in the dark. "Then what do we do?" I stared at him, my body still burning from his touch, my mind torn in two. Either we stop, or we stop hiding. The words hung heavy between us. His jaw clenched, and for a split second, I saw every fear written across his face, the team, his parents, the entire world crashing down. But beneath it, I also saw something else. Hope. He reached for my hand. His fingers trembled against mine, but he didn't let go. "I'm not ready," he whispered. "But I don't want to lose you." I wanted to scream. To cry. To beg. Instead, I squeezed his hand, my own trembling just as much. "Then figure it out, Ethan. Because I can't keep breaking every time you run away." The bell rang outside, muffled through the door. We let go at the same time. By the time we stepped back into the hallway, the moment had already shifted into something dangerous. His jaw was set, my eyes red. Anyone looking too closely would know something had happened. And suddenly, I realized the truth. That kiss hadn't solved anything. It had only made everything harder. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every detail replayed in my head, the taste of his lips, the fear in his eyes, the way my body betrayed me by wanting him even when my mind screamed no. I wanted him more than ever. But wanting him meant risking everything. And now there was no going back. The supply closet might have been dark, but the aftermath was blinding. All day, I could still feel the press of his lips, the ghost of his hands on my skin, the thunder of our hearts beating in sync. And yet, Ethan avoided me. At lunch, he sat across the cafeteria, shoulders hunched, pretending to laugh at something one of his teammates said. His eyes flicked to me once, just once, but it was enough to slice me open. He wasn't mine out here. He wasn't even allowed to look at me like that. And I hated it. By the time last period ended, whispers had already started. 2 kids from sophomore year passed me in the hall, one nudging the other. You see him and Ethan disappear earlier? One snickered. My blood ran cold. Were we that obvious? Did someone see? I shoved through the doors, desperate for air, only to find Ethan waiting by the bleachers, his hood up, hands jammed into his pockets. Come with me, he muttered without looking up. I followed. Because of course I did. We ended up behind the gym, the one spot teachers rarely checked. He paced in tight circles, his breaths uneven, like he'd run miles. You've got to be more careful, he snapped suddenly. His voice was low, sharp, but shaking underneath. Me? My laugh came out bitter. You're the one who dragged me into a damn closet. His jaw clenched. Because I couldn't hold it in anymore. Then why are you acting like I'm the problem? Silence. He stopped pacing, staring at me with that same mix of fire and fear. Because they're already talking, he said finally, voice breaking. People saw us leave together. Do you have any idea what happens if they find out you kissed me? I shot back. If they find out you wanted it just as much as I did? He flinched like I'd hit him. My chest burned, every nerve fraying. God, Ethan, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep pulling me close 1 second and pushing me away the next. I'm not your dirty secret. He raked a hand through his hair, his breathing ragged. You don't get it. You don't get the pressure, the expectations. I stepped forward until we were inches apart. Then make me understand. Show me I matter more than your fear. For a heartbeat, I thought he might. His hand twitched like he wanted to reach for me. His lips parted like he was about to say something true, something real. But then he stepped back. And I swear, it felt like the ground gave out beneath me. I can't, he whispered. His voice was barely audible, but it crushed me more than any shout could. I laughed, bitter and broken. Then what the hell are we doing? He didn't answer. He just stood there, torn in two, his silence louder than anything. I walked away before he could see my eyes sting. That night, my phone buzzed over and over. Messages from friends, classmates, people I barely even talked to. Yo, you and Ethan got something going on? Why'd you two disappear together? No way it's true, right? My chest tightened with every notification. The rumors were spreading faster than I could keep up. And Ethan? He hadn't texted once. I almost threw my phone across the room. Almost. Instead, I typed one message, hands shaking. We can't keep hiding. Either you're with me or you're not. I stared at it for 10 minutes before hitting send. No reply. The next morning, I dreaded walking into school. My stomach churned, my throat dry. As soon as I stepped into the hall, I could feel it, the stares, the whispers, the smirks. Ethan was at his locker, surrounded by teammates. One of them nudged him, laughing too loud. Ethan forced a smile, like everything was fine, like nothing had happened. Our eyes met across the hall. And just like that, he looked away. My chest caved. I skipped lunch, hiding in the library. It was quieter there, safer. I thought maybe I'd get through the day unnoticed. But then Ethan walked in. He shut the door behind him, his face pale, his eyes wild. He looked like he hadn't slept. Why'd you send that? He demanded, his voice low but intense. Because I'm done waiting, I said, standing so he couldn't tower over me. I'm done being your half-choice. If you want me, Ethan, then want me. Out loud. In daylight. Not just in closets and shadows. He shook his head, almost panicked. You don't understand what you're asking. If people find out, they already know. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. They're already talking, Ethan. The only one still pretending is you. His eyes burned with something between anger and heartbreak. I can't lose everything, he whispered. And I can't lose myself just to keep your secret, I shot back. The silence that followed was suffocating. He stared at me like he was drowning, like I was the only rope within reach. But instead of grabbing hold, he let go. I'm sorry, he said finally. And then he walked out. The library felt colder after he left. My hands trembled, my throat closed, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Because somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Not really. That night, I lay awake again, the ceiling swimming above me. His voice replayed in my head, I can't. I'm sorry. But even through the hurt, the doubt, the fear, another thought pushed through. He didn't say he didn't feel it. He didn't say he didn't want me. He just wasn't ready. And maybe the question wasn't whether he wanted me. Maybe the question was whether I was willing to wait. Some things can't be undone. That kiss in the closet. His arms around me, trembling like he wanted me more than air. The way his eyes betrayed every word he tried to deny. Those moments are burned into me, no matter how much distance he tries to put between us now. We didn't talk again, not really. He walked past me in the halls with that same careful mask, laughter a little too forced when teammates slapped his back. And me? I kept my head down, pretending I wasn't breaking a little more each day. But silence has its own weight. His avoidance said more than any confession ever could. He was scared. He was hiding. Yet I knew what I felt wasn't a lie. Sometimes, late at night, I replay that moment when his arms locked around me like I was the only one in the world. I hold on to it, not because it fixes anything, but because it reminds me I wasn't crazy. That for one heartbeat, he wanted me without fear. Maybe he'll never be ready. Maybe that night will stay a secret we never speak of again. But deep down, I carry this truth: love isn't always loud, or certain, or safe. Sometimes it's fragile, dangerous, and hidden in the dark. And sometimes, it's enough to know you were someone's safe place, even if only once.